In the age when America was growing, when railroads stretched like veins across mountains and valleys, a legend was born. His name was John Henry. He was not a king, not a general, not a man of wealth. He was a worker, a steel driver. Yet his story grew so large that it still echoes today, more than a century later. This is the legend of John Henry, the steel-driving man who defied the machine. The origins of John Henry are wrapped in mystery. Some say he was born into slavery, others claim he was born free after the Civil War. But all the stories agree. John Henry was not like other men. He was said to stand taller, stronger, and broader than anyone around him. His chest was wide, his arms like iron, and his heart beat with a sound like a great drum. Some legends tell of his childhood, when he could lift more weight than grown men, when his voice carried across valleys, and when people whispered that he was destined for greatness. But John Henry's greatness was not the kind that came with riches or fame. His destiny lay in labor, in the hard, brutal work of building America's railroads. In the mid-1800s, railroads were the arteries of progress. Trains connected cities, carried goods, and opened new frontiers. But to build these railroads required unimaginable labor. Men worked with hammers, spikes, and sheer muscle, carving tunnels through mountains and laying tracks across rivers. John Henry became a steel driver, a man whose job was to hammer steel spikes into solid rock so that others could blast it open. It was backbreaking, dangerous work. Rocks would shatter, steel would spark, and at any moment, death could come from a falling stone or a misplaced swing. Yet John Henry thrived in this work. With two great hammers, he swung harder, faster, and longer than anyone else. Workers sang songs to keep rhythm, and John Henry's hammer blows were like music, steady, thunderous, unstoppable. His presence inspired those around him. In the railroad camps, he became a living legend. But change was coming. The Industrial Revolution was sweeping across America. Machines, powered by steam and iron, were beginning to replace human labor. And then came the steam drill, a machine that could pound through rock, driving steel without tiring, without resting, without eating or sleeping. The railroad bosses saw the steam drill as the future. It was efficient, powerful, and could do the work of dozens of men. They boasted that soon machines would replace workers entirely. For John Henry and the men who depended on their strength to survive, this was not just a threat to their jobs. It was a challenge to their very worth as human beings. John Henry could not stay silent. He looked at the machine, belching smoke and steam, and declared, "That machine may be strong, but it has no heart. I will prove that no machine can outwork a man." A contest was arranged. The setting, the Big Bend Tunnel in West Virginia, or sometimes the Coosa Mountain Tunnel in Alabama, depending on which version of the story you hear. The challenge, John Henry, with his hammers, against the steam drill. Man versus machine. Flesh and blood against iron and gears. Crowds gathered to watch. Workers, bosses, and strangers all came, eager to witness the showdown. On one side, the steam drill hissed and roared, its pistons pumping, smoke rising into the sky. On the other, John Henry stood tall, gripping his two hammers, his muscles taut, his eyes blazing with fire. The signal was given. The contest began. The steam drill lunged forward, hammering into the rock. Sparks flew, gears screamed. John Henry swung his hammer with all his might, each blow echoing like thunder. His rhythm was perfect. Strike after strike, steel into stone, sparks lighting up the darkness of the tunnel. For hours, man and machine battled, the air filled with dust and smoke. Workers shouted, sang, prayed. The machine spat out steel, but John Henry's arms did not slow. His breath came heavy, his chest heaved, yet his will was unbreakable. At last, the contest came to its end. When the dust settled, it was clear. John Henry had beaten the machine. His tunnel was deeper, his spikes driven further. The crowd erupted in cheers. JohnHenry had proved that the strength, courage, and heart of a man could surpass the cold power of a machine. But victory carried a price. As the cheers rang out, JohnHenry staggered. His mighty heart, the same heart that had carried him through the contest, began to fail. With his hammer still in his hand, JohnHenry fell to the ground. He had won the battle, but the effort had cost him his life. They say he died with a hammer in his hand, lying beside the very tracks he had helped to build. His body was buried near the tunnel, and his story buried itself into the soul of America. JohnHenry's story did not end with his death. His legend spread, passed from worker to worker, from town to town. Songs were sung about him, ballads that carried his name across America. JohnHenry became more than a man. He became a symbol of labor, of struggle, of the dignity of human work in the face of machines. In work camps, men sang to his rhythm. In fields, they told his tale. Even today, folk singers, writers, and storytellers keep his memory alive. To some, JohnHenry represents the fight of man against machine, a timeless story of progress and sacrifice. To others, he represents the African-American worker whose contributions built much of America, but were too often forgotten. The legend of JohnHenry reminds us of something greater than strength. It reminds us that machines may be faster, stronger, and more efficient, but they cannot feel pride, hope, or sacrifice. They cannot love. They cannot dream. Only people can. JohnHenry, the steel-driving man, stood as proof that while machines may shape the future, the human spirit will always shape the meaning of that future. His victory, his sacrifice, and his legend live on, stronger than steel, deeper than stone, carried in the rhythm of every hammer that strikes, in every song that is sung, and in the memory of a nation that still honors his name.